Well, we're not seeing the effects of Tropical Storm Michael just yet. We're on the beach, and as you guys can see, there are still a lot of people out here. But authorities are saying that there is a high rip current risk. They're telling beachgoers to not go in the water. They're saying it's incredibly dangerous. So right now, while we're not experiencing the effects of the storm just yet, here's what we are expected to have: about 1 to 3 inches of rain. We're expected to get a lot of flooding on the sound side. We're also expected to get winds up to 50 miles an hour after midnight. Once that happens, I'm told that we can be dealing with some downed trees, some potential power outages. Now, the National Weather Service said the biggest threat right now is a threat of tornadoes. Now, as Tim had mentioned earlier, it's a low risk. We have not seen any tornadoes, but it is still possible. As for locally, how people are responding, Dare County schools canceled all after-school activities for today in response to this storm. The NC Department of Transportation staged some heavy equipment along Hatteras in case there is some overwash issues along NC 12. And I spoke with someone from Dare County Emergency Management. She told me that she thinks this area is going to be fortunate through this storm. Live in the Outer Banks, Jacqueline Lee, 13 News Now.